Hi, and welcome to Black Belt in Real Estate. I'm excited to have you here today. My name is Peter Jumrukovski, a local real estate expert here in Los Angeles and former World Karate medalist. I love helping people investing, buying, and selling real estate. So if you want to learn more, you're in the right place. Also, I would like to let you know that I'm very much approachable, even though this is a podcast where mostly me and my guests are talking. I would love to talk to you offline and connect and really understand what your goals and dreams are, because one of the best things in my life is to help others achieve their dreams. I've had the fortune to achieve many of my dreams first by working hard, but mostly by getting the help of incredible people that wanted to help. They felt good helping. And, I've learned that the more you help others, the happier you are. And here we are. And again, I have a great friend, a two-time World Taekwondo champion, and an amazing mortgage lender and also an advisor when it comes to real estate. So we're going to talk about the state of the market, which, a lot of people are asking themselves, what's going on in the real estate market, specifically when it comes to the interest rates. Arjun, he's an expert in this area, and I'm reading every day. As a matter of fact, everybody on Instagram 6-7 months ago were, especially real estate agents, were bragging that we're going to see 6 rate cuts in this year. And I was kind of laughing because I knew that I didn't know, but I said, I hope so. But I think that's very, positive or like over optimistic, from what I'm seeing here in Los Angeles, the real estate market is still very strong. I just sold the listing. We had 11 offers. It went 300,000 over asking price. But today in Wall Street Journal, I think the Fed is saying that they're expecting to do only 1 rate cut. So let's see what Arjun has to say. He knows more about this. And Arjun Dhingra, welcome to Black Belt in Real Estate.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you having me on, man. I think the situation with the Fed and what was being basically, assumed or speculated on with rate cuts was clearly a little bit delusional. And what people have to understand, first and foremost, the Fed, although they have what's called a dot plot map, right, where they basically are just projecting anonymously. All the Fed governors will say how many rate cuts or hikes or where they see things going in the future. It doesn't mean that's what they're going to do. It's just what their personal vote or opinion is in that moment. But rarely does it ever pan out. So somewhere along the line, there was one of these meetings that took place where some Fed members were basically projecting 4 or 5 or 6 rate cuts. And then what happens is somebody catches hold of this, and then in the media, this gets blasted, mainly through social media, that there will be 6 rate cuts. And then there's all this false optimism that comes into the market. And people are just assuming that if rates get cut, that everything's going to make everything better, without any understanding that the Fed and what they control has nothing to do with mortgage rates. There's certainly some influence, but it has nothing to do with mortgage rates. So let's first quickly explain why the Fed raises and lower rates, right? For like someone in high school, because I always like keeping this like really oversimplified. You have to understand the Fed basically is in charge of controlling the money supply in this country. And they have a faucet that they can either open and money just comes out into the economy or into the system, which can stimulate. Money starts sloshing around, it gets spent, it gets transferred, there's tax, it comes back, it goes around, right? There's a circulation power. Or they can tighten the faucet, which is pulling money out of the system. So when we have low inflation or the economy is doing good, you'll see that money sometimes coming in, or maybe money needed to come in by way of COVID, stimulus, right? Money needs to get pumped into the system to inject confidence. The negative consequence of that is that at some point, that money starts chasing such few goods and services that it runs up the price. That's the definition of inflation. Too many dollars chasing too few goods, right? Or like take housing, because we're talking about housing. This is a real estate podcast. Too many dollars chasing too few homes. We have housing inflation, right? It runs up the price. So then what happens is when you have inflation, the Fed has to act on this, because if you have inflation that runs and gets away, it can really crash an economy. So they have to tighten the faucet and pull money out of the system or slow it down, because if there's less spending, less hiring, less wage increases, prices cool off. So that's what the Fed does, right? In a really simple layman's term, or layman's explanation. So what's happened is now, guys, inflation has been really stubborn. There's lots of different reasons for why it's been so stubborn, but it has stayed very persistent in the economy. And it just hasn't cooled off as fast as they expected, which is why every meeting, it goes from there was going to be 6 cuts to maybe there's going to be 5 cuts to 4 cuts to 3 cuts to 2 cuts. Now they're talking about 1 or 0. There was at one point when the data was not looking good that they were saying, shit, maybe they're going to have to hike. Forget about cuts. They might have to do another hike. So we have to understand that that's what the Fed's job is. They're not there to make people happy or whatever. They have to stay non-political. They can't, they can't look like they're interfering or meddling with anything. Their job has to be to control the money supply. But rates now, guys, like they are where they're at. And the only thing that's going to really bring them down is if there is some kind of break with the labor markets. Inflation is coming down. It's just not coming down fast enough. It's being referred to as stubborn or sticky. You'll hear that being said a lot in the news. So that it is where it is. It'll eventually come down. Now, what's going to determine whether or not the Fed ultimately cuts rates or leaves them alone until past the election, and then who knows after the election what's going to happen, is going to come down to the labor markets. If unemployment starts to climb, and if we start to see the jobs data and people filing for jobless claims and jobless benefits is starting to increase, and all this stuff is showing there's weakness, which we're already seeing. There's already a lot of cracks. But if it persists and unemployment climbs, it's right now sitting at about 4%. But if it climbed to 4.1, 4.2, I think you'll see the Fed change their tone and start talking about a cut, because they would need to, again, open the faucet and put money into the system, cut rates, inject some confidence and get things going on, because they don't want the economy to slip into a recession. Yeah. And that's the danger of not doing something. So they're in a very tough spot. They can't, if they cut rates too soon, to your point, Peter, like you were saying, 6 cuts, that was overly optimistic. It was also, it would have been incredibly naive, because if you cut rates too soon, you'll get right back to square one. You get inflation all over again. And then all the work you did and all the pain and all the bank failures and everything negative that happened by raising rates so fast, it's all in vain, and it didn't need to happen. So that's why they're in a very, very tough spot.
Let's talk about, I mean, thank you for sharing this. It's awesome. Let's talk about somebody here in LA, for example. They're like, I love, like, this helps me, gives me a better understanding, but I'm an attorney. I've studied so many years. I'm making, multiple 6 figures, and it's still hard for me to buy a house in this city. What should I do? Should I wait? Should I buy now? Like, what should I do? I'm frustrated.
Yeah, no, and that's a common thing, because I have a lot of friends in LA, close friends of mine, that have been trying to buy for years. They keep striking out. I tell you this, the regret that people generally have of, we've been trying to buy and we didn't, but now when we look back, when we should have stretched maybe a little bit to get in, we would have been sitting, we would have been looking now at a position of being much better off. So it would have been a little bit uncomfortable. I think you have to, in markets that are high demand and they're just relentless markets, like Los Angeles, right? Is very much that. The Bay Area, San Francisco, very much the same way. Prices aren't necessarily going to come down. You can try and wait for a little bit of a blip where there's a flatlining in prices or a timing where things come down. But most of the time, from a monthly budget standpoint, that ends up being offset due to the fact that rates are higher. Yeah. So it's all relative. The answer to your question is, what do you do? If you want to really own, take what you can get and just get in somewhere. I'm not saying buy anything. I'm not saying that. But if you have to stretch a little bit or incorporate a little bit of help, or if coming up a little bit in price to make that offer to finally get it would just eliminate maybe a little bit of your social budget, right? You're not going to go out to eat as much. Do what you have to do, and you will figure out and kind of make it work, because 1, 2, 3 years will go by. And if you're still in the same spot of trying to find a place, that house that you wanted that was 800,000 or 900,000, now the price points are up over $1 million, and you're wishing you would have stretched, because now you become completely outpriced. So it's not the best answer from a practical standpoint, but it's thinking more long-term. Do whatever you have to do to get in. And then if you have to live a little leaner or tighter, I'm not saying be house broke, but if you have to make some other adjustments, do it. The biggest way you can do it, just as a quick bit of advice for the example you gave me of a W-2'd attorney. Yeah. A lot of clients don't think about this, so they don't get this advice. because you're going to have a mortgage interest deduction now for the first time in your life, right? If you're going from renting, you can change your W-2 withholding to maybe not have as much money held back because you're going to be able to offset that with the mortgage interest deduction so that your take-home pay is more, so that you can stretch a little bit more. And that's one hack into altering the finances that you have without having to change anything.
That's a good point. And what is your opinion about home ownership? Obviously, we're a little bit skewed, but there are investors out there that are putting out content saying, that your home is not an asset because you're paying debt every month. So
Yeah.
what's your opinion about that? For me, like if I can start off, I somewhat agree with that, but I also see a benefit of home ownership because I see it in myself, the equity that I have gained by living and enjoying, remodeling the home exactly as I want and just seeing the joy of waking up, seeing my son playing somewhere where I have, something that I've made. So can you just talk about that? Because I know there's a lot of people making good money and they're reading both sides and they're confused because some people are saying like, don't buy a home. And some people are saying, get in as fast as you can.
They're all right. That's the short answer. Everybody's right. It just comes down to personal preference.
Yeah.
All the people like Ramit Sethi's who say, don't own anything, rent, and I'll teach you how to be rich.
Yeah.
He's not wrong. He's
Yeah.
not wrong. Grant Cardone, who loves real estate, but he says, don't buy a house for you, invest it into other real estate, invest it into doors, apartments, a fund. Stay renting, but invest in real estate. And then there's other people like you and me that want to pay our own mortgage, irrespective of the cost. I'd rather pay my own mortgage because of the benefits and the enjoyment of ownership, but also really because it fixes my payment. I have payment security. When you're a renter, you'd never have true payment and roof security. Because if something happens to that apartment complex legally and they have to evict everyone or something, or the lease is terminated or your rent goes up, there's all these provisions of unpredictability and gray areas that you can get caught and blindsided by. So there's no perfect situation, but I personally prefer, and you have to just see what your preference is. If you want to have payment assurance and payment security, great. Owning is good for you. And also the majority of Americans, the home that they own is going to increase their net worth compared to a renter by that of 40x.
Yeah.
40x. So it's going to help you out in the long run. Yes, you'll pay interest. Yes, you do all that stuff, but you also have your own place for enjoyment and it's your own peace of mind. There's other people who prefer the Grant Cardone method, which is totally fine. They're not wrong. And then the Ramit Sethi method can work, but it requires immense discipline and sophistication and of taking the money and investing it into something. So you've got to be a lot sharper, which is why he's made a lot of money saying, I will teach you how to be rich, because it has to be taught. This isn't something you just figure out and say, oh, I'm renting. Let me just invest in something and see if I can get a better rate of return. You're going to have to be taught a sophisticated level of investing. A lot of homeowners in the United States are everyday citizens. They work, they raise their families. They don't have a lot of time to learn about these things. So writing a check to pay their mortgage, which is their forced savings piggy bank, putting it into their own equity, that's the best they can do. And there's nothing wrong with it. That is great because at least they're saving it, right? At least they have this asset and something to show for it.
It's forced saving. Yeah.
It's forced savings. That's what I like about it. So the answer to all of it, Peter, is that they're all right. It just comes down to your personal preference, because you can do fine in any one of those three categories. I have friends that do nothing but invest into real estate projects, syndications, REITs, and funds, and they rent because their rent is so cheap, but they have the discipline to seek these things out and they believe in real estate. They know it. They just don't want the responsibility of it for themselves. So personal preference.
Yeah, no, I love that. And fun fact, a discipline is obviously we're martial artists, so we have the discipline in some areas, not in every area. I lack short in some areas, but it's funny. Ramit, I see him almost every day at the gym. Here,
Oh, you do?
Venice on Gold. So he's working hard. He's a disciplined guy, which is cool. Awesome. So I think my final question is, and I know this is something that a lot of people want to ask, but they don't necessarily ask, figuring out buy or not to buy now or buy later. I think the challenge a lot of people that are making good money have is who should they ask? Because let's face it, and let's be honest, even though we're very good at what we're doing, we have tons of reviews, we're doing a lot of business, the first impression when somebody meets a real estate agent, I don't know about a mortgage broker, but it's like, I don't trust you. You just want to make money. And that's the first impression. That's something that I have to like, hey, my guard is down. I'm here to help you. What do you want to do? I don't really like, my job is not to sell you on anything. My job is to help you if I can, but I know they have that, barrier. So necessarily they don't want to talk honestly with me about this until maybe 6 months down the line, if they really truly know me. And the only way for really get to know me is either we are friends or we look at houses for 6 months, and then they already decided. So like, how do you, like, who do you ask? Like friends that are better off than you, that are like, that you're inspired by? Like, how do you do it?
I think, there's not a straight line with that, but definitely people you want to always like look up to or seek counsel or follow, because success leaves clues, right? That great Tony Robbins line. So if you have people that are close to you that are doing something right, or they have something in their life that you want, you follow what they're doing. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
So if you have friends that are building a lot of wealth by buying and selling and flipping real estate, maybe that's something you're passionate about. Or they just have bought a home and they've been staying in it and paying it down because they know that's going to be a huge asset for them later. That's something to learn from. Or they're like Ramit, who you see at the gym, they rent, but they're always looking at sophisticated ways. I think you need to seek first which lane of those three that kind of suits your own personal taste and preference. And then once you've done that, find people, whether they're online or you seek them out in the real world, who are actually doing it. They're the embodiment of that philosophy, of that investing philosophy. And follow them, try and mentor them. People are a lot more likely or approachable than you think, and they want to teach and they want to help, they want to give, like you said, they're happy to do that, so, and share their resources and teach other people. So you put yourself out there, but first figure out kind of which lane you want, and then find the people that are operating and thriving in that lane, and that's who you learn from. And it, like I said, success leaves clues. So if there's people that are doing something well and they've made mistakes and they're willing to teach people so they can also avoid the mistakes, those are the people you want to follow. Not just people who are necessarily talking about it, but actually living it. Because to your point, there is a lot of distrust and there's a lot of skepticism about, oh, what are you doing, right? So that's why putting out content, that's why all the stuff that we're doing, what you do with the podcast, what I do on social media, I'm always putting out stuff. I'm never selling it. I just want to give advice, give guidance, give clarity, give direction in this market. And if I do that enough, I'll build trust to where people are like, he's not trying to sell anything. He's actually genuinely helping. And it makes the approach so much easier. It's what helps you out in your real estate business, obviously, with being so active and having great podcast guests and running a good podcast and everything else. So that's where I think that's how you want to seek people out.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I like, hey, we're not here to sell you on anything. If you want to buy a house, I would love to be in your corner and help you kick ass and get a good value, keep you safe. But right now, this is all, you never have to reach out to us if you don't want to, and you still got a lot of great value. So thank you. But although we would love to hear from you, because when I hear from somebody, it gives me fuel to do more, to give more, to be more.
Yes.
And this topic is so much more than real estate. It's about creating and casting a vision for your life. Buying, not buying, it's a lifestyle. How do you want to live? How do you want to show up with your family? Where do you want to travel? How do you want to create a good life? Because in my mind, we're here to help others, but we're also here to help ourselves and create a beautiful life and a beautiful experience with the relationships we have. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to Black Belt in Real Estate. Arjun Dhingra, I know you're so busy. You should have seen our conversation. In order for us to be here right now, we had to cross bridges, but we made it happen. Especially Arjun, I have two kids. You're running a very successful business, and you're taking the time here to share freely. We appreciate you. People want to connect with you. Where's the best place?
At Arjun Mortgage on Instagram. So ARJUN and then the word mortgage all together. It's me who answers everything. So I look forward to connecting with anybody anytime there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.